Welcome back, everyone. We're about to jump into something pretty unique, even for this show.
Yeah, buckle up.
We're taking a deep dive into the Gospel of Thomas.
This isn't your typical Sunday school gospel, not by a long shot.
Right, when people hear gospel, they usually think Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the big four.
The familiar faces.
This one, though, it's kind of a hidden gem. Discovered back in 1945 in Egypt, it's a collection of 114 sayings attributed to Jesus.
And that's it. Just sayings. No parables, no miracles, no birth story, no resurrection narrative. Just words.
It's almost like someone took all the most essential teachings and distilled them into these short, potent statements.
Almost like a secret code, a wisdom teaching.
And it's interesting because some of these sayings, they really challenge traditional Christian views.
Absolutely. The Gospel of Thomas gives us a glimpse into a side of early Christianity that was influenced by Gnosticism.
Ah, Gnosticism. Now that's a word that always gets people talking.
Yeah.
Could you give us like a Gnosticism 101?
Well, think of it this way. Gnosticism is all about seeking personal spiritual knowledge. The word gnosis actually means knowledge in Greek.
So it's less about blind faith and more about a direct experience of the divine.
Exactly. Gnostics believed that the key to salvation was through this inner knowing, this awakening to your true nature.
And you see this reflected throughout the Gospel of Thomas.
Oh, absolutely. Take saying one, for example. Whoever discovers the interpretation of these sayings will not taste death.
Okay, wow. Right off the bat, that's a pretty powerful statement.
It is, isn't it? And it goes right to the heart of Gnostic thought. The idea is that true understanding, this gnosis, leads to a kind of spiritual immortality.
So not physical immortality, but a transcendence of death through knowledge.
Right. It's about reaching a higher state of being, a state of liberation from the cycle of suffering.
Definitely a different take than what you usually hear in traditional Christian teachings.
It is, for sure. And this difference in perspective, it's all over the Gospel of Thomas.
One thing that really strikes me, is the lack of narrative. Like you said, no birth story, no miracles. It's just these sayings kind of floating in time and space.
Right, no context, no backstory. It's like we're dropped right into the middle of these teachings.
How do you think that impacts the way we understand them? I mean, does it make them more open to interpretation?
It definitely adds a layer of complexity, doesn't it? Without the context of a story, each saying becomes like a puzzle piece that you have to try and fit together.
Like we're invited to bring our own understanding and experiences to the table.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so fascinating to study. It's not just about passively reading these sayings, it's about actively engaging with them, wrestling with them.
Trying to unlock their deeper meaning?
Exactly. It's like a dialogue between the text and the reader, or in this case, the listener.
Okay, so we've got this collection of sayings, no story, deeply influenced by Gnostic ideas. How does that compare to, say, the parable of the sower that we find in the canonical Gospels?
Oh, that's a great example. In the canonical Gospels, you get the full story, right? The sower, the seeds, the different types of soil.
A whole shebang.
Right. But in Thomas, it's stripped down, almost like a Xenocoan. Just a few lines that hint at a deeper meaning.
So it's less about the literal act of sowing seeds and more about the inner transformation that needs to take place.
Exactly. It's about cultivating the right conditions within ourselves for spiritual growth, preparing the soil of our hearts.
I see. So even a familiar parable like that takes on a whole new dimension in the Gospel of Thomas.
It does. And that's just one example. There are so many sayings in there that challenge our traditional understanding of Jesus and his teachings.
And it all goes back to this idea of personal revelation, this inner journey of seeking truth.
Absolutely. The Gospel of Thomas is all about looking inward, about finding the kingdom of heaven within ourselves.
So even though it's a very ancient text, it still speaks to something very contemporary, this idea of taking responsibility for our own spiritual growth.
It does, and that's what makes it so relevant, even today. It's a reminder that the spiritual journey is not about blindly following someone else's path. It's about forging our own.
And that's a powerful message for any seeker, regardless of their religious background or beliefs.
It is. It's a message that transcends time and culture, a message that speaks to the very core of what it means to be human. It really is all about that inner journey, that transformation that happens from within. And that's something we see emphasized time and again in the Gospel of Thomas.
Yeah, and sometimes it's expressed in ways that are really, well, kind of mind-bending.
Oh, for sure. Cryptic, even.
Like, say, in 21, where Jesus says, when you make the two into one, and when you make the inner like the outer and the outer like the inner, then you will enter the kingdom. What's he even talking about there?
Well, it's one of those sayings that's ripe for interpretation. It could be talking about all sorts of dualities.
Like what?
Well, think about it. Male and female, light and darkness, spirit and matter. The idea is that true wholeness, true unity, comes when we reconcile these apparent opposites.
So it's about achieving a kind of inner harmony.
Exactly. Bringing together the different parts of ourselves, transcending those divisions. And that's how we enter the kingdom.
Okay, that makes sense. And it kind of ties into another theme we see in the Gospel of Thomas, this challenge to traditional religious authority.
Yes, absolutely. There's this real sense that true spiritual understanding doesn't come from blindly following rules or doctrines. It's about that inner knowing, that direct experience of the divine.
Yeah, like in saying 3, where Jesus says, if your leaders say to you, look, the kingdom is in the sky, then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you, it is in the sea, then the fish will precede you. Rather, the kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you.
Powerful, isn't it? It's like he's saying, don't look for salvation outside of yourself. Don't rely on others to tell you where to find it.
It's already there, within you and all around you.
Exactly. And this idea of inner authority, it really sets the Gospel of Thomas apart from the more traditional hierarchical structures we see in some other branches of Christianity.
You know, it's interesting. Some of these sayings, they almost sound like something you'd hear in other spiritual traditions, like Buddhism or Hinduism.
Oh, definitely. That's one of the things that makes the Gospel of Thomas so intriguing. It speaks to these universal truths that seem to resonate across different cultures and time periods.
This idea of seeking enlightenment within, of transcending duality, of recognizing the interconnectedness of all things.
Exactly. So while it's rooted in a specific historical context, the Gospel of Thomas offers insights that can speak to seekers of all paths.
It's like it's tapping into something that's fundamental to the human experience, this longing for meaning, for connection, for something that's bigger than ourselves.
It is, and it's doing it in a way that's both challenging and incredibly liberating. Because it's saying, you have the power within you to discover the truth. You don't need anyone else to tell you what to believe.
There are a few sayings that really stand out, just kind of jump off the page.
Oh, absolutely. Some of them are real head scratchers.
Like saying 70, where Jesus says, I will destroy this house and no one will be able to build it again. What's that all about?
Yeah, that's one that's generated a lot of discussion. Some scholars think it's a reference to the destruction of the Jerusalem temple.
Ah, so a literal interpretation.
Right. But others see it more metaphorically.
More like destroying the house of our ego, our false sense of self.
Exactly. It's about tearing down those structures that prevent us from experiencing true spiritual liberation, breaking free from the limitations we impose on ourselves.
And then there's that line in saying 1 of 14, the one where Simon Peter says to Jesus, let Mary leave us, for women are not worthy of life. I mean, wow, that's pretty harsh.
It is, and it definitely reflects the patriarchal attitudes that were prevalent at the time. But it's important to note that Jesus rebukes Peter for that statement.
Yeah, he says something like, I will make her male, so that she too may become a living spirit. Okay, even for the Gospel of Thomas, that one's a little out there.
It is, and it's one of those sayings that sparked a lot of debate. Some scholars see it as reinforcing traditional gender roles, but others view it more symbolically.
As in, it's not really about literal gender transformation, but about recognizing the equality of all souls in the eyes of the divine.
Right. It's about transcending those binary categories and recognizing the divine spark in all beings, regardless of gender.
It's like the Gospel of Thomas is constantly pushing us to think deeper, to question those preconceived notions we all carry around, to really grapple with those big questions about life and existence, and to do it in a way that emphasizes personal experience and inner exploration.
Absolutely. It's not about accepting someone else's interpretation. It's about finding your own truth, your own path to the divine. It's about owning that journey, taking responsibility for your own spiritual growth.
Yeah, not waiting for someone to hand you the answers on a silver platter.
Right. It's about digging deep, questioning everything, trusting that inner voice.
There's a real sense of urgency in some of these sayings, too.
Oh, absolutely. Like, wake up, pay attention.
Yeah. It's like snap out of it and see what's right in front of you.
Exactly. Like in saying 24, where it says, recognize what is in your sight, and that which is hidden from you will become plain to you. For there is nothing hidden which will not become manifest.
Ooh, I like that one. Almost like a call to mindfulness,
Totally. Be present. Be aware. The truth is all around you, just waiting to be discovered.
So we've got this text, the Gospel of Thomas, no narrative, just these powerful sayings, deeply influenced by Gnosticism. Where does it fit into the whole picture of early Christianity?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It's definitely different from what we see in the canonical Gospels.
Right, and that's what makes it so fascinating to scholars. There's a lot of debate about its origins and its relationship to the more mainstream Christian tradition.
So some people think it's an early independent source about Jesus,
Hmm.
maybe even predating the canonical Gospels.
Exactly, like a window into those very early days of the Jesus movement before things got more formalized and structured.
But others think it was written later, maybe in the 2nd century, and that it reflects those Gnostic ideas that were kind of bubbling up at that time.
That's right. So there's still a lot we don't know about its origins and how it fits into the bigger puzzle.
But regardless of when it was written, it definitely offers a unique perspective, a different way of understanding Jesus and his teachings.
It does. And it reminds us that there were many different ways of experiencing and interpreting the message of Jesus in those early days.
A lot more diversity than we might think.
Exactly. And that diversity, it's reflected in the texts themselves.
It makes you wonder how things might have turned out if the Gospel of Thomas had been included in the Bible.
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting thought experiment.
Would it have changed the course of Christian history?
It's hard to say for sure, but it certainly would have presented a different picture of Jesus and his teachings.
One that emphasizes personal revelation, inner authority, that direct experience of the divine.
Right. Maybe it would have led to a more mystical, more experiential approach to faith.
Focusing on that inner transformation, a journey of self-discovery.
It's amazing to think that this collection of sayings, hidden away for centuries, can still speak to us so powerfully today.
It really is. It challenges our assumptions, makes us question what we think we know about Jesus, about spirituality, about ourselves.
And I think that's the beauty of it. It's not a text that gives you easy answers. It's a text that invites you to ask questions, to dig deeper, to wrestle with those big mysteries.
And ultimately to find your own truth, your own way.
And on that note, I think we've just about reached the end of our deep dive.
Well, I have to say, this has been a fascinating exploration. We've barely scratched the surface, really.
Oh, there's always more to uncover with the Gospel of Thomas. It's a text that keeps on giving.
I hope our listeners feel inspired to continue this exploration on their own, to dive into those sayings, to let them challenge and provoke and inspire.
It's a journey worth taking, for sure.
So until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep exploring the depths of your own being. Thanks for joining us.